Okay, so here I'm going to teach you the basics of soldering. So here we have some board that I'm going to solder to. Here we have a resistor I'm going to solder on there. When I want to solder, I'm going to place it in here, okay, in the places that I want to solder it. Okay, so I got this resistor in there. And then on the back, I want these legs pretty much going straight up and down. Okay, now when you do that, it can kind of fall out like this, which you want to avoid. Okay, so some options you have are to like stick it through and maybe like bend one of the legs to hold it in place. The thing is, it can get tricky when you have legs that are kind of bent to the side like that. So you would do this and maybe solder this connection here and then go back and bend it back so it didn't it was kind of straight up and down when you soldered it. But so I put the piece in here. I'm going to clip it in place using this board here. I've got 3 connectors on here. You really only need 2 of them. If you want to use the 3rd one, maybe like to hold the piece in place, you can. Okay, and so I've got this thing kind of supported in place with this back part. So I'm going to solder this part first, and I'll come back and bend this up and solder that second part. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the steps of soldering first, and then I'll go ahead and solder. So the steps are this: you take the soldering iron out of the holder. Okay, you can see I got a holder right here. I've got my fan on right here, so I have some ventilation. Okay, and the first thing I do, you can see there's some excess solder on here from storage. I'm going to clean that off using this brass sponge. Okay, you can actually also do this with a wet sponge, but these brass sponges work a lot better, and this is actually, I think, it's copper. They do a better job keeping it clean. Okay, so now you see the tip is clean. It's shiny. If it's not shiny, you might want to melt some solder on there and clean it again to see if you can get a little bit shinier. So the next step now, I'm going to take this, I'm going to apply it to the joint and put a little bit of pressure on it, and I'm going to hold it there for about 10 seconds. Now this iron is a little bit more powerful than some of the ones you're using, so it's going to heat up a little faster. Some, as they get hotter, take less time. I say to take about 10 seconds. It doesn't necessarily take that long. So I hold it here for 10 seconds, get it nice and hot. Then I bring the solder in and melt it at that connection. I remove the solder once I've got it melted and I see the solder spreading around. Then I remove the iron. If I'm done, I'm then going to melt solder onto the iron to prevent oxidation, to clean any that's already there. So I'm melting some solder on, and then I'm not going to clean it. Instead, I'm going to replace it into the holder. Okay, and so that it stays stored like that with that solder on it, keeping it from oxidizing. Okay, so now I'm going to solder it for real. So I take it out, I'm going to clean it right here. Now I'm going to got my solder ready. Okay, I don't know if you can see it in the video. Got my solder ready. Going to take it here, apply a little bit of pressure. Okay, hold it here for about 10 seconds to get it heated up. Okay, and then I'm going to bring the solder in to melt it after about 10 seconds. Okay, going to kind of bring it in between the connector and the iron. Okay, so it's melting, and you see it kind of push down onto the copper. That's where you want it. Okay, and then remove it. Okay, and that's a pretty decent soldering connection. Alright, I'm done soldering, so I'm going to melt some solder back on here, put it back in the stand. Okay, now this board, it just got heated up by the soldering iron, so it's hot, so you want to be careful touching it. But this part over here might be okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bend this up so I can now solder this piece, straighten it out a little bit. Okay, so bring back the soldering iron. I've got the solder on the tip to keep it clean. I'm going to clean it off. Okay, and now I'm ready to go. I'm going to hold it here, give it some time to heat up the connection. Then I'm going to come in and melt in the solder. Okay, you can watch it kind of push down into the copper. That's what I want to see. I'm going to remove this. Okay, this is again about optimal amount of solder. And now that I'm done, I'm going to again melt solder on here for storage. Okay, I can't stress enough, when you're using the soldering iron, you clean before you solder, and then when you're done, you melt this on and put it back. Don't clean the tip when you're done unless it's pretty dirty and needs cleaning, because you want to keep it stored with that solder on it. Okay, when you're done, you're going to remove the board, okay, from the holder. Okay, you're going to take it over to the trash, and above the trash can, you're going to clip each of the legs just about as far down as you can. Okay, Alright, clip those legs. And again, I'm doing it here so I don't have to move the camera. But you want to make sure you do it over the trash can so we don't have a bunch of these little clippings all around the room. Okay, and so here's some pretty good soldering connections. Okay, these ones even have a little bit extra solder, it looks like. So just kind of be careful about that. And really, the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. You'll start to get the hang of it pretty quick. Okay?